Please ignore the fact that I am having a horrible hair day today. Like, nothing that I tried to do with my hair today went right, hence the scarf. And even with the scarf, things are not going spectacular. So just ignore it. Focus on the fact that my face looks like pretty cute, and like I have a mushroom on my shirt. Super cute, right? Like, focus on those things. Don't look at this, okay? What up, Hope Skits? It's your girl Skitten, back at it again. We are here for the final part of the History of England 100 Years War. This is like the 6th part, I think. So if you guys haven't already watched parts 1 through 5 on my channel, go ahead and do that. Go watch those and then come back here, because this is part 6. And if you know how numbers work, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 come before 6. So you're gonna watch those ones first. Watch those ones first. I'm super excited to finish this series. I actually meant to finish it last week, but I had a lot going on and I low-key forgot. But I remembered this week, so here it is. Look at me getting my stuff together. The last one was about England's victory at Agincourt, I think I'm saying that name correctly. So now we see what the aftermath is of that victory and what happens next for England. After this series, we are going to start a new one. If you have an opinion about which one we should start from Extra History, let me know down in the comments below. Other than that, I hope you guys are doing well, staying safe and sanitized. I'm super excited to see what this video has in store for us. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started.
Welcome back, friends, to the final installment of the Extra History of England series.
Yes.
Voiced splendiferously by the History of England podcast host, David Crowther. Thanks so much for lending your voice to this series, David.
It was my pleasure, Matthew. Thank you so much for having me.
And to think, I made it this whole series without trying to do a faux English accent.
Yes, we're all very proud of you for that bit of restraint. Right, let's get to the end of our tale.
I didn't make it this far without attempting a faux English accent. Actually, did I? I don't know if I attempted a faux English accent or not. Whatever, I did it just now, so.
Ecclesiastes chapter 10 verse 16 was much quoted in the Middle Ages. Woe to thee, O land, when thy king is a child. In France, minorities had often been disastrous. England's experience was very different.
I'm so sorry.
VI, minorities had often been disastrous.
Minorities?
England.
I don't think minorities is the phrase you were looking for.
England's experience was very different.
Yeah.
In Henry VI's minority, Henry V's 2 surviving brothers, John, the Duke of Bedford, and Humphrey, Duke of Gloucester, and a Regency council were to guide England safely through the minority, until Henry VI assumed his place, and England was to wish that her king had never come of age at all.
Oh no! First of all, I understand that minority has like a different definition here. It was just funny. But also, I don't remember Henry VI being so awful, and maybe I have him confused with somebody else.
Bedford was the eldest of Henry V's sons. He was an impressive man, intelligent, a good diplomat, a strategist, and a decent military commander. To him was assigned the role of commander and governor of France. From his magnificent palace he built in Rouen and from Paris, Bedford ruled as much of France as had accepted Henry VI as king. Gloucester was a slightly different kettle of fish. He was surely loyal, intelligent and cultured, but he was also volatile and a populist. Parliament and the King's Council did not entirely trust him, so rather than be sole regent in England, Gloucester was made protector, head of the council only. Gloucester whined continually about this, but never to the point of rebellion. During the minority, the English strategy was to hold what they'd won, while making itty-bitty border raids into the rest of France, for defensive purposes only, of course. Meanwhile, Charles VI of France died in 1422, and his son the Dauphin became Charles VII. As the English held Paris, he had to set up his court at the ancient royal city of Chinon, south of the River Loire. The English held France of Henry VI was organised for defence, with garrisons in key towns throughout Normandy and Greater Anjou. The inhabitants were part of the English administration. They submitted taxation to maintain their own defence. For 6 years, Charles got nowhere. In fact, at Verneuil in 1424, Bedford won as complete a victory as Agincourt and Crécy had ever been. England was once again blessed with talented commanders in men like Salisbury and Talbot. At Chinon, Charles VII's court was a despairing, depressed mess of defeatism. And then in 1428, something truly remarkable happened. The English were besieging the city of Orléans. First, a cannonball took the life of Salisbury, the best English commander. And then at Charles's court of Chinon, there appeared a French peasant girl. She claimed that God had sent her a vision to lead the French king to victory. Now, religious mystics were honoured in the Middle Ages.
We did a Joan of Arc series already, so feel free to go check that out. I'm so bad with dates and timelines, guys. Like, I didn't even realize that everything that we've been discussing occurred before Joan of Arc came around. Like, I'm putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Like, it's making sense to me now.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
No more chance of success than a snowball at a summer fete, and gave her little or no support, Charles allowed her to travel to Orléans. Joan of Arc, or the Maid of Orléans, as she became known to history, did not lack for confidence.
Sorry to interrupt, David, but if our viewers want to know more about Joan, our patrons voted for a full series on her life, which will air right after this special series ends.
We already did that.
So, you know, if you could just have no spoilers, though I guess there's no way to not spoil.
It's history!
So just, keep calm and carry on.
Okay.
I'll show myself out.
Thank you.
Against all expectations, Joan won round the hardened French soldiers trapped in Orléans and inspired them. They counterattacked with the Maid of Orléans at their head, dressed in shining armour, and they threw the English from the siege. The English fell back in chaos and confusion. 3 critical English fortresses fell one by one. And then came the unthinkable. The hated, invincible English archers were ridden down and destroyed at the Battle of Patay. The spell had been broken. The English could be defeated. In the following year, 1429, there in the cathedral, in a blaze of glory, Charles followed his ancestors and was crowned King of France. And there was nothing Bedford could do to stop them. All he could do was watch in helpless fury. And then the Maid of Orléans turned on Paris itself. It had been the greatest comeback since Lazarus, but it was here that Joan's momentum was stopped. Within 6 months, Mr. Arc had been captured, and in May 1430 was burned as a heretic in Rouen. But she'd lit a fire the English couldn't put out. Her story is just incredible. Like any legend, there is much exaggeration that attached itself to her. But the sight of a peasant girl leading armies to war is astounding. And she transformed the war. From now on, the Anglo-Burgundian alliance was always on the defensive. In 1431, Bedford organised the coronation of the 9-year-old Henry VI in Paris as King of France. But although Bedford did his best to organise a new offensive, the English treasury was bare. The cost of maintaining these garrisons was bleeding England and her Burgundian allies dry. Now the Duke of Burgundy no longer believed England was capable of winning. And so a massive diplomatic conference was held in 1435. Hundreds of diplomats gathered every day from France, Burgundy and England in front of the papal mediator. England watched helplessly as Burgundy and Charles kissed, hugged, made up and agreed they were not scared of the English pig dogs and made a separate peace. It was a disaster for England.
How you get cut out of your own shit, bruh? Oh my God. You, like, what kind of ambassador are you? Hello?
Up and agreed they were not scared of the English pig dogs and made a separate peace. It was a disaster for England. It drove the nail into the coffin of English-held France, hammered home by the news that Bedford himself was dead. In England, at the Palace of Westminster, Henry VI sat on his throne in the presence chamber and announced that he was now 15, the minority was ended, and he assumed his role as King of England. But Henry VI had little in common with his warrior father. Henry VI could have done with either a bit more hero or a good dose of monster, because as it was, he was better suited for the church than the throne. Henry VI was indecisive, weak-willed, he hated war and wanted only peace with France at any cost.
So he's useless. So he oh my God. Oh my God. Imagine having a useless leader of your country that cannot fulfill any of his promises. Man, I wouldn't know anything about that.
For a while, the Duke of Suffolk, the king's chief advisor, tried to protect his young king. For 10 years, the war of attrition in France dragged on. England was outgunned and alone.
We are outgunned, outmanned, outnumbered, outplayed, blah, blah, blah. Okay, sorry.
but commanders like Talbot and Richard, Duke of York, fiercely held the line.
Okay.
Charles and Burgundy could not break the English grip on Normandy, Maine and Anjou. The logjam was finally broken by a truce of such stunning naivety that the mind literally boggles.
Okay.
Henry VI wanted peace and Henry VI wanted a wife. In 1445, it appeared that Suffolk had negotiated both. Henry's wife was to be Margaret of
I was
Anjou,
wondering
a
when we
minor
would get
French
to her.
princess. And King Charles of France gave some vague promises that he would come up with some suitable peace proposals. But to pay for the marriage, all of Maine and Anjou would have to be handed back to France. Obviously, this was a laughable proposal. Ha ha ha! Without the solid agreement of peace, no one would be stupid enough to give away 2 entire provinces. So you guessed it, this is exactly what Henry and Suffolk did. At first, no one in England understood what had happened. Margaret of Anjou became queen and the streets of London ran with wine as they celebrated. But by 1447, the streets of London ran with refugees from Maine and Anjou. King Charles had no new peace proposals, except permission to leave very quietly and give back everything Henry V had won. People began to understand what had been done in their name, what had been given away by Suffolk and Henry, and that English blood had been shed in vain. But now the levee was breached, the flood began. In 1450, the last battle in northern France took place at a village called Formigny. The English were slaughtered, and the last Englishman fled Normandy, never to return. The end in Gascony was not far behind. In 1453, England's last competent commander of the glory days, Talbot, died in the cannon fire of the Battle of Castillon. Bordeaux and Gascony finally fell to the French 300 years after Eleanor of Aquitaine had brought them to the Plantagenet dynasty.
I'm dead.
The immediate
Oh my
impact
God.
was political chaos. Suffolk had tried to hang on to power by having the outraged Duke of Gloucester seized and thrown into jail, where he died from a heart attack.
Okay.
But now Suffolk's enemies gathered and forced him from power. Henry tried to protect his loyal, hard-working servant. In this, he was not entirely successful. Suffolk's head was in fact found stuck on a pole on the beach and the rest of his body had a hard time enjoying life without it. Remarkably, political poems appeared directly attacking the king. Now this was exceptional. The king was God's anointed. He could do no wrong in the medieval world. Political criticism was always directed at the king's advisors. The enemies of Henry began to gather round the son of that man executed by Henry V in 1415, Richard, Duke of York. Very soon, the incompetence of Henry VI would launch England on 30 years of destructive civil war, known to history as the Wars of the Roses.
Yeah.
So while the 100 Years' War...
That's really the part where I know about. The War of the Roses is where my knowledge starts, you know? And then like it goes through to like the Tudors. But I didn't realize what led up to the War of the Roses. You know what I mean? This is an incredible amounts of incompetence and like the utter lack of leadership. It's just so sad too, because like when you think about it, royalty, and it's true now, kind of, but like back then especially, these kids were raised from birth to run a country. They were like, but man, maybe because like I don't know, not to be super modern about it, but like fatherless behavior, right? Like maybe because he didn't have like a dad to raise him, but even the people around him should have been easily able to train him in the ways of the monarchy. But they were so focused like on themselves and their own power. There was nothing like set in stone written down for him. I couldn't tell you, but this is incredible. Like all of the victories that they had, all of the work that Eleanor of Aquitaine put in, all of the work that like the royals before him put in. I mean, obviously they had some mess ups back then too, but this is incredible.
English conquest of France came to a crushing end. In the longer view, in defeat was for England victory. The 116-year struggle helped define the English. English was now the official language and had helped build a joint sense of purpose in the nation. Geoffrey Chaucer and his Canterbury Tales made English for the first time acceptable as a language of culture.
If you've never read the Canterbury Tales, by the way, highly suggest it. I highly suggest. I had to read it in like the original Middle English or whatever, and then I had to translate it for a test. But anyway, it's really good and really fun.
Edward III and Henry V had made it the language of government. During the religious wars of the 16th century, this sense of unity would enable England to defeat the mightiest armada Europe had ever seen. In France, the French kings were forced to centralise and tackle separatist forces, and by so doing, with the fall of the Dukes of Burgundy, France became the arbiter of Europe. And lastly, the later history of England is unthinkable with lands in France. With their continental ambitions crushed, England would turn to the New World, to the Caribbean, the Americas, the East, and create a commercial empire that would in turn make her the most powerful nation on earth.
Absolutely. Wow. I literally just was not aware of the details. And you guys know I am a self-proclaimed like Anglophile, really enjoy English history, but apparently only to a point, and apparently I only know like bits and pieces of things before that part. But this was such a roller coaster of victories and defeats and stalemates, and we have good kings and bad kings and good alliances and bad, like it's just incredible. And honestly the fact that France and England made it out at all is crazy. It's nuts. I might do their War of the Roses series at a later point in the future, but I think I'm going to venture away from Western history and try to get into some of the Eastern history that Extra History likes to cover. So I'm really looking forward to that. But like I said, if you guys have any suggestions for series that I should start, leave those down in the comments below. Very interested in your guys' opinion on that. Don't forget to leave your reaction requests and recommendations. And other than that, peace out, Hope Biscuits. It's Skittin' Lit.